Hello ladies, gentlemen, and persons in between. My name is Tim Snowborn, and today we're going to set aside politics for a bit and talk about human maturity on this episode of Serious Issues. So this question occurred to me because I work with kids, and my favorite age group to work with is the preschool, Head Start, kindergarten age. Now don't get me wrong, most of the time I enjoy working with these adorable little guys, but every once in a while they'll do something that to me seems obviously stupid. Like when they try to wash their hands, sometimes they'll put some soap on one hand and then just rinse it off in the water, because that's hand washing to them. I put soap on my hand and then I rinse it off in the water. Come on, kid. Or if they're working on an art project where they have to glue a shape onto a piece of paper, they will use way too much glue. And again, I think to myself, come on, kid, how is this not completely obvious? You just need a little bit. But then I have to remind myself that it's not obvious to them. It's obvious to me because I learned it long ago when I was their age. I had to learn how to wash my hands. I had to learn how much glue to use. And sometimes I'll look at something that is true on the individual level and wonder if it's true on the macro level, like for everyone. Or vice versa. I'll take a look at something on the macro level and wonder if it's true on the individual level. And in this case, I realize that the human race as a whole is much the same way. There's a lot of stuff we don't do anymore that seems obviously wrong now, but it wasn't always obvious that it was wrong. It used to be that if I had a problem with my neighbor, I would just kill him. That's it. But then the landowners realized that if they just let people kill each other willy-nilly, there's going to be no one left to tend the livestock or till the fields. So they decided, okay, if you have a problem with your neighbor, bring it to us and we will decide who's right and who's wrong. It's part of the reason we started forming governments. Eventually, we submitted to the rule of law and learned that you can't just kill someone because you have a problem with them. Likewise with slavery. Most of us now agree that it's wrong to own another human being, but it wasn't always obvious that you shouldn't do that. We had to make that mistake to learn how wrong we were. And realizing this made me wonder how mature we are as a species. If you think of the human race as one person, how mature would that one person be? Do we have the maturity of a 6-year-old, a 14-year-old, a 28-year-old, a 49-year-old? How mature do you think we are? That's the question I'm asking here. Now I know it's tempting to point to the stupid shit we still do and say that we have the maturity of a toddler, but I would argue that moral progress has been made. Again, we don't kill each other willy-nilly. Slavery is still a thing in some parts of the world, but for the most part we've gotten rid of it. We're definitely not over racism, sexism, homophobia, etc., but I would argue that we have made good progress on those fronts. To answer this question, you kind of have to ask, what is the ideal that we're aiming for? How mature should we be? What lessons would we as a species have to have under our belts before we reach a level of maturity that can be called adult? Assuming you think of the adults as mature, which is not a given. I want to say something here about the Kardashev scale. I've talked about this before. That's the Type 1, Type 2, Type 3, Type 4, and possible Type 5 level of technological advancement. But technological advancement is not the same as what I want to call spiritual maturity, for lack of a better word. I've also talked before about how I'm inclined to think that technological advancement kind of goes hand in hand with spiritual maturity. Not necessarily, you can be technologically advanced and spiritually immature and vice versa, but I think the more technologically advanced a civilization gets, the more mature they get. As I said before, it's the whole Maslow's hierarchy. If your civilization is advanced enough to provide for everyone's needs, then you probably don't suffer from the fears and anxieties and anger and depression that plague humanity. And the minimization of those flaws, to me, is a mark of spiritual maturity. Humans, I believe, are a 0.5 on the Kardashev scale, by the way. How mature you think we are as a species depends partly on how mature you think we should be. It depends on what you see as the ideal that we're shooting for. I think the fact that we are no longer allowed to own people and the progress we've made on sexism, racism, homophobia, etc., I think those are good things. But you might disagree. You might think that's a step backward in the wrong direction. So you would probably consider us very immature in that regard. Maybe you think we're devolving. So how mature do I think we are? I don't know. I mean, again, it's tempting to point to the stupid shit we still do and say that we're not very mature, but we have made a lot of progress in a lot of areas, and I don't think we should downplay that. It's easy to make an upward comparison, but we should also make a downward comparison. We've come a long way, but we got a long way to go, so 40? Tell me what you think, guys. How mature do you think we are as a species? Are we basically Stone Age toddlers, or do you think we're on the verge of sage-like serenity? Thank you very much for joining me for this conversation. If this is your first time on my channel, welcome. It's great to have you here. I would love to have you subscribe and join me for future conversations and check out my previous videos for more. If you're a current subscriber, welcome back. Thank you for tuning in again. I very much appreciate your continued support. Thanks again for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time in another episode of Serious Issues.